To have faith in God is not a stagnant state, it's a journey. As believers, we should grow in our knowledge of God and His Word. Walk with Alan Cutting and many other believers as we walk the believer's journey.
And I want to thank our sponsors, Guerrero CPA, Guerrero Law, and the trade show displays. And I just thank everyone for all their blessings, and we want to continue to give you the Word in truth as we teach the Scriptures. Today I have two very special guests. We're going to call our show today, I Have Fought the Good Fight. Now I know Paul said this, in Timothy, and so I have a couple here are probably they are near and dear to my heart, some of my favorite people in all the world. It's Lon and Diana Eckdahl. They are my pastors and have been since I was 16, I guess. And following through my life, my mentors, they're just amazing people. And so we're going to talk to them. As we've been doing this family dynamics, I'm bringing them about because they've had such a successful life. And they've been married, I'll let them tell you. So hello, Lon, Diana.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you today?
Old.
I'm doing great.
So tell me, how long have you guys been married?
61 years.
61 years. And together all of the whole time, through all the churches and all the ministries you've been through it together, right?
Right.
Right.
And how long have you been in the ministry?
Probably close to 65 years.
65 years. So did you guys get married while you were in college?
Yep.
Yes, we did.
Was that difficult or was that okay?
It was great.
It turned out wonderful.
After I got married, my grades went up.
Well, yeah, she's smarter than you and probably helped you.
No, didn't.
Well, so we have talked a lot about different family dynamics, and we've talked with people who are single parents. We've talked about abuse in the home. We've talked to couples who have interracial marriages. We've talked to those who have been adopted, who have adopted. And so I'm just trying to get this going through this several months, and you're a perfect couple for this. And so I wanted to talk to you and have you talk to our audience about marriage and about, because you basically have an amazing marriage, you are an amazing couple, and you are amazing individuals. And I think in all of this together, you're like the perfect package. Now, I know Lon is about to tell a joke on that, but that's okay.
No joke.
And one of the things I want to say is that this couple they've pastored churches. In fact, what was the amount of people that were in your first church? How many?
First church, when we left there, it was about 75.
And what about when you got there?
About 50.
About 50? And you went to Maui. How many were there when you went to Maui?
23.
23?
That included our family of 6.
So we're talking more like 17. And what about Atascadero?
Yeah, that when we went there, they were running about 70. When we left there, I think our last Sunday we had close to 400.
Okay. So the reason that I ask all that, because I have said on my program, I have said in my teachings in my class and everything, where I go when I speak about you, that you're probably the most successful pastor I've ever known. Not because you have 10,000, 15,000, or 20,000 in your congregation, but I measure that by integrity. I measure that by honesty. I measure that by the fact that people look up to you, both of you, in ways that you're somebody they would go to if they needed help or answers to something or questions or problems, because you have lived the life of integrity. You live the life of Jesus, basically, both of you. So in my perception, to me, a successful pastor couple is somebody who's lived a life that exonerates and basically shows the life of Jesus. And I think the two of you have done that from ever since I've known you, which was back in 1970, maybe 68, yeah. 69. So
it kind of sounds like you're over advertising.
Well, I can't say enough of what I can't say enough of what I mean by this. I just want to make sure everybody understands what I'm saying, that it's absolutely from my heart and it's really the truth. So anyway, Lon, you always tell everybody that in your testimony that when you were a kid, you were really shy.
Yeah.
Extremely shy.
Yeah.
Okay. So my question is, when you're in college, who asked who to go out?
Well, we were working together in a Christian service team. And so we were together doing that ministry every weekend. And we kind of just did things together. That I don't know that there was any official date until we went to a Dodger game. And that was probably our first date.
No, our first date was when they had, what do you call it, at college, when the girls are supposed to ask the boys out.
So she initiated it.
So I asked him out, and I went out with him, and then I can't remember if he was first or second, but I went out with my cousin first, and then I went out with him.
Well, there you go. Truly shy.
And then we had a bunch of guys that were going to go to a Dodger game, and we were eating in the dining hall, and so Dinah was the only one there, a female. So I said, "Would you like to go with us?" And she said, "Sure." And then by the time we got back to the dorm, all the guys that were going to go all finked out. They said they had studies to do and stuff. So I called Diane on the phone and said, "Well, they're all not going, but if you still want to go, we could go." And I didn't have a car or any money. So she said, yeah, she wanted to go. So I borrowed this guy's car and I robbed my penny bank because tickets were $1.50 then for general admission. And I counted out 300 pennies and we drove to Dodger Stadium. And while she's holding out her hands and I'm putting all those pennies in her hand, this guy walked up and said, "Hey, would you like a couple tickets?" I said, "Yeah, if you want all these pennies." And he said, "No, I don't want your pennies. You can have the tickets." Well, he walked off. I looked at the tickets. They were box seats down 6 rows from home plate. And so we had to move the car down to a different parking lot. Found out the car had no reverse. So we had to push it out of the parking space. And we drove it down to the parking lot. And we went in, and that was really our second official date, I guess.
Wow, with all those complexities, it's almost like a match made in heaven.
Yeah. Remember at that time the concession stand had popcorn in paper megaphones. And I kept that. I still have that in my cedar chest after 60 some years.
Well, I know Juan has been on our program before. We've had 2 programs with him. So we've heard from him. We're going to hear from him again. But Diana, I want you to give your testimony. I think this is really important. I've known you as a mother, and you're an amazing mom. You've got 4 kids. You've got lots of grandchildren and now great-grandchildren. And you're been a teacher, as well as I found you on some website called Supermom, and you're listed in the Supermom website. So, I don't know where that came from, but I want to hear your testimony. I think our audience would love to hear your testimony.
Well, I was raised in a Christian family. I'm one of 7 children, and we lived on a farm. But the Lord was always the center of our household. And we were at church every time the door was open for anything. We were always at church. And when I was 9 years old, is when I went forward to the altar and gave my heart to the Lord. And I've never looked back, never. And in all those years, I've never been tempted by anything that would take me away from the Lord, which I praise him for.
Okay. One of the things I've noticed about you in all the years I've known you is that you tend to make really solid choices.
Well,
You're laughing.
I'm sure sometimes I haven't made solid choices, but I've tried. My choices have always been, is this what God wants me to do?
Yeah.
So that's where I've stood.
So tell us about motherhood.
Oh, it's not always easy, especially when you're working full time and you're have all of the church things that need to go on. So if it hadn't have been for Lon helping me during that time, I don't think I could have done it, because it seemed like I was on the go for like 6 a.m. till 9, 10 o'clock at night every day.
Yeah. I remember when I was a teenager, and I'd be at your home when I was a teenager. See, Karen Wood, back then it was Karen Crine, would be there. And after Sunday night church, you did something just religiously. I don't know if you remember what it was. And you had 4 children there, and all of us and Lon, and you had these big bottles. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
No.
You made ice cream freezes.
Oh.
Every
I don't
Sunday
remember
night.
that.
You don't remember that?
No.
You would have a bottle of orange soda. You would have a bottle of 7-Up. You have a bottle of Coca-Cola. You have all these drinks, and then ice cream. And you say, okay, who wants whatever? We would make our choice. You put it in a blender and whip it up. And every Sunday night we do this.
Oh.
You don't remember that?
No, I don't remember that.
I do. It was when I fell in love with ice cream, freezes.
In fact, you'd like one right now, right?
Oh, I know. So it was amazing. But I thought it was, really a lot of dedication because it was a lot of work. I also remember that in the evenings when because the kids were small back then, back in the 1971, how old would they be?
In 71, well, they were born in 67, 69, 71, and 73.
Okay, so Brenda wasn't there yet.
No.
So, but I remember.
In our first church is when we had our first 2.
Glendale Lake Street.
Yeah, at Lake Street.
Then you went to
Northridge.
North Hills. Yeah.
Northridge, yeah.
Northridge. I remember because I came out of a home that was really dysfunctional. I had a single mom basically that really wasn't around, and I kind of didn't stay there a lot. I was really mischievous at night.
Amen.
So,
More than rather.
yeah. But I learned what a home life was by watching your home life. I watched you guys at night. I remember watching you, Diana, go in with the kids, and I had no idea where you went. And you come out, and you tell Lon, your turn. Your Lon would go in. And what you were doing was going into the children's bedroom, talking to them, and then praying with them. And then Lon would go in and so forth. And you did this every night. And I thought, this is really cool.
And when she had me take care of the kids, the only thing I couldn't handle was dirty diapers. I came up with a plan. When I took them off, I'd put them in the freezer, and they'd freeze solid. The ladies had to shake them out.
So everybody, as you're watching this, Lon will probably tell jokes all through this hour.
No.
I do know, it was funny. I remember when Debbie told me this thing that, when you would go in, when Lon would go in, he would already be there. She'd go in the bedroom, and he would be hiding in the closet, and then scare her.
Yep.
And yep. So I remember Debbie talking about that. And so you guys spent time with your kids, and I think that is a really big thing. I don't see a lot of times, a lot of parents spend a lot of good quality time with their children. But in these things that I'm talking about now is where you're giving good quality time to your children. I remember watching you play basketball with Gary, all the way when you're living on Maui. He's growing up and you're still playing basketball. And finally, he got to the point where he can beat you.
That's right. Yep.
And grew taller.
Yeah. So, but you had a lot of things going. You had, people in your home. You had people in and out. I know that when missionaries would come, they would stay in your home. But you still had time for your children. And I think that's just incredible because you're the epitome of not just a married couple, but parents as well. And you not only parented your own children, you parented us.
I was always concerned about the pastors that lost their kids to the church and to the Lord. And so I decided that was never going to happen. So even when we were on Maui and they were in grade school, where I would go make calls like on the elderly, I'd take my kids with me and I involved them in the ministry. And usually the older people would talk to the kids and just ignore me. So, so they enjoyed that. And so they remember those times when they'd go with me in my ministry and be a part of it. So I thought that was important.
And the other thing too is being consistent, because they knew if we said something, we would carry through on it.
That looks good. Yeah.
We never had to say it twice.
And I don't think, wasn't it, you said that after the kids got up, they were no older than 6, I'm sure. They never got a spanking after that because they knew what the consequences would be.
Oh, and they didn't like spankings.
No.
Well, one thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I remember right, by the time they were in college, I think all of them got involved in some kind of ministry.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, they got really involved when we moved to Maui because the congregation was so small, and the 4 of them became the leaders of the teenagers. And so I think that was really vital with their growing up and with their leadership that they have today. Now they're all 4 involved in their churches. So that's really good.
So I want to say something about Maui, because you left a church about 400 plus to go to a church about 17.
Yeah.
Okay. And in the church that you left in Tascadero, you actually got a program together and built the new building, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
So here you go, and you leave this new building that you just built to go to this little bitty church on Maui, which had to be a tremendous struggle financially.
Well, there was no way we could make it financially when we went, but the Lord had made it clear that we were supposed to go, so that's why we went.
So
and the thing was that when we had no mailbox, we had to go to the post office, to get the mail. And when we first moved there, it was how often that he would go to the post office and here would be a letter from somebody with money in it, and it would be just exactly what we needed.
Almost weekly.
Yeah.
And there were different people, not always the same?
Always different people.
Yeah. And the thing is that once we were there, about 6 months before I got a job, 6 or 8 months. And the day that I got this teaching job, even though it was a permanent substitute, but the day I got that, that's when the money stopped coming, right, in the mail. Well,
that's when the food stopped coming.
And the food stopped coming because we had a lady in our church that worked in the cafeterias, and the big 10-gallon cans. She would bring us anything food that was left over.
So we ate on school food for months.
Well, I remember Sundays were good because we always had a potluck.
Yeah.
You could smell it in church. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. So now you taught at Lahaina Luna, correct?
Yes, that was my full time. I did subbing several different places. One place I subbed for a year and a half. And then I got in Lahaina Luna, but I understand the school is gone now with that fire.
That's correct. That's correct. So Lahaina Luna was on the other side of the island, so it was quite a drive just to get there and back.
It was about 40 miles.
Yeah. Well, so Lon, give us your testimony.
Well, I was raised in the church. And when I was 9 years old, on an evening service, we had an evangelist preaching, and I went forward and never forgot it. Just a real life-changing experience for a 9-year-old. And I had my ups and downs, kind of had a yo-yo kind of experience as a Christian until I got to college. And then things kind of deepened with my spiritual journey. And that's when the Lord called me to preach. That's a story in itself.
So how is this shy little kid turn into somebody that's extroverted?
Well, I don't know that I'm extroverted.
I understand.
I still have a hard time getting up in front of people to, like Rotary or whatever. Sometimes I'd have to speak or pray or whatever. That's still difficult, but to preach, it just something happens when I take the word and preach that makes it just a great experience. So when the Lord called me to preach, I knew he had the wrong guy because I couldn't get up in front of people, and I still had that poor self-image. So I told the Lord, because I'd heard some missionary students say the same thing. I said, I don't really believe you're calling me to preach. But I will say this, that I will follow you anywhere you lead me. And if you open the doors, I'll walk through them, but I'm not pushing any doors open. And that's the way I left it. And the Lord started opening doors.
So as I see your life, and I'm going to go back to your testimony. So I see you're a father. We've obviously talked about you being his parents, but a pastor. Also, I would say that you're a Bible teacher. I've not only heard you preach, but I've heard you teach scripture, and you're pretty amazing. You're pretty good at this. You're also been a chaplain. In fact, I think, tell me if I'm wrong, I believe you became a chaplain and started this in Maui when you started the police chaplaincy there. Is that correct?
Well, we actually started it at Tascadero.
Oh, okay.
And so I was a police chaplain in seven different departments as we moved around. And then I ended up with being an FBI chaplain.
Yeah. So that's scary, FBI man. And now
I'm not so sure.
And now that you're basically a bona fide author, you type your name into Google, Lon Eckdahl, and here come all these areas where you can look at your books or buy your books from different publishing companies as well as Amazon and so forth.
Yeah.
So tell us, why did you become an author? What was the reason for this?
Well, I've used a lot of stories in my sermons. Jesus told a lot of stories. And so I like to illustrate my messages with a lot of stories and also humor. So when I would do that, people would say, you need to write a book about your stories. And they kept bugging me to write a book. So I wrote a book just for my friends and family. And it told the stories that I experienced through God's leading in every pastorate I had. Every chapter is a different church. And I'd pastored 6 churches. And so that was my first book. And then after it did well, then the second book basically was a lot of humor with scriptural applications to the humor. You know, you can get a lot of good scriptural applications to jokes. And so I had a book entitled, Do You Get It? And then I ended up with a devotional through the book of John at the end. And now I'm working on my fourth book that's ready to go to the publisher now. And that's the way it happened.
Speaking of using scripture as humor, you preach a sermon now on our YouTube channel. We happen to have 4 of Lon's sermons that he's done in the last couple of years. And one of them is about God's love. And he bases this out of John chapter 11. And he talks about Zacharias had died and Jesus comes up to the tomb. The funny thing is, Lon tells these jokes and he waits for everybody to laugh, or everybody does. But this one, he just kind of goes over it because he takes this solemn area and he talks about Jesus says, roll the stone away, and he has Lazarus come out. Do you remember what you said about Lazarus?
Yeah, he was bound in grave clothes, and so he couldn't really walk out. He had to bounce out like a rabbit.
Yes. So, I mean, I had to stop laughing. I was laughing. I said, I can't believe you said that. It was so great.
Yeah, he hopped out just like a rabbit, and Jesus said, loose him, let him go. I never even thought about that, and all the times I've taught about that, I never thought about him not being able to walk. So. Yeah, that's true.
So talk about your churches, talk about your ministry, talk about your family and all the things about you as what's made you Lon, what's made you, Lon and Diana. What has created this person you are now at 80 years old?
We don't have enough time. I mean, when you talk about 80 years, how do you put that into a half hour?
Well,
anyway,
go ahead.
It all comes back to that commitment I made to the Lord, that if he would open the doors, I'd walk through them. That's why I became a police chaplain. That's why I took the various churches. I took every church whenever I moved, the Lord had made it very clear. And so there's nothing in the churches I pastored or anything that I would do any different. I'd do it all over again. And even when people said moving from Tascadero to Maui, going from 400 people to 17 didn't make any sense to anybody. They said I was at the peak of my ministry and I was throwing it all away. But the Lord said, go, so I went. And it's the church where our kids really established their faith. And that's where they really grew close to the Lord, because we had to depend on the Lord for everything we had. And so God knew exactly what he was doing, and so it was great.
Okay. Tell us about your relationship with Diana.
She's a great partner. God told Adam that he was going to give him a helpmate, and that's what I was looking for. And so she helps me a lot. She's my right hand and my left hand. She's just been very special.
Well, earlier I made the comment to you, Diana, that, one of the things I've noticed about you is you make pretty good, solid choices. So I've been around Lon a lot.
Too much.
And I know some of the crazy choices he's made. One of the things I thought was really kind of interesting, is Sunday nights, when we have services on Sunday morning, Sunday nights, he's like all wound up. Everybody's to bed, and he's like, I got to go do something. And I remember when we were in North Hills, Northridge area, he's like, you want to go to Skid Row? And there were trips he would take several times down to Skid Row down in LA, and that was pretty interesting.
Well, the reason is when I worked my way through college, I worked on Skid Row. So I became very familiar with that area of Los Angeles, and so it always intrigued me, all the winos and things that were happening on Skid Row. So that's where I'd go for my entertainment.
What's funny is several years ago when I was in Moldova, Susan was not with me, and so one of the missionaries wanted to take me to a country called Transnistria, which was part of Moldova, but there really is and they aren't. and the United States, they do not recognize them as a nation. So they're in some kind of a upheaval politically, and I didn't know this. So I mentioned to Susan about going there, and she goes, I don't think you should go. If I hadn't talked to her, I would have gone. But, she's telling me, no, you're not going.
So you never did go?
I never did go. No, there actually were an upheaval. The guy that got voted in as the new president, the old president was going to establish some kind of a revolt. And so if we went over there, and they could have stopped me, grabbed my passport, and I read about or talked to somebody where they actually took a guy's passport and said, I need $400 or you won't get your passport back, and he started lighting it on fire. So Susan got this information from another missionary over there and told me, you're absolutely not going over there. And still to this day, even when they're in peace, they're not in peace now, but she wouldn't let me go over even when they were in peace.
See, that's why the Lord gave her to you.
Yeah. But so I remember when you were at North Hills and you needed to buy Christmas presents. I don't even know if your children know this, but you got a job in the middle of the night, and you got me into this to deliver newspapers 2 a.m.
Yeah, 2 a.m.
Do your kids know this?
I don't know. They were pretty young then.
Well, the reason you said is that I have no money for Christmas presents, and I want to have some Christmas, so you started delivering the paper.
Yep.
That was hard, getting up that early in the morning and delivering papers.
Yeah, it was. Except for the fact that I was a night owl, so I liked the hours, but it was really hard the next morning.
Yeah, for me too. I'm a night owl even still, but the mornings were tough.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it was kind of hard because with 4 kids, when we had 2, I did try to do some teaching just half a day, but it didn't work out at all. Because basically by the time I paid a babysitter for 2 and I was only working 4 or 5 hours a day, I didn't make enough money to make it count. So we decided that I would just go ahead and stay home with the kids. And so that's one of the reasons he did the paper route, was because he knew that there wasn't a way with 4 kids then that, we would be able to, I would be able to work, or we'd be able to make it.
Yeah. So I know that it was a tough road, especially in the beginning. I know I've been there, and watched this, and I watched you through the years. And when you guys left Atascadero, actually when you went to Atascadero, it was a small church, and they said they really didn't have enough to pay you and so forth. But, watching God open the doors to where you went, to watch him work, was unbelievable. When you told me that going to Maui was really tough, but it was the best thing because your children that's where they really grew in the Lord. Right. So
and the kids have all seen how the Lord has worked things out in our lives, and that's why today they're so dependent on the Lord for everything, because they know that maybe their wants or wishes aren't going to be granted, but what the Lord does give them, they find is even better than what they wanted.
Yeah. I think you have 4 of the most amazing kids. All went to Point Loma, all did wonderful, all got involved in ministry, all, grew up and has grown up into really, I would say, successful adults.
Right. And it's neat because, when your grandkids are all Christians too, and being involved in their church, it really makes you feel good, to see how the Lord's blessing generation after generation.
Yeah. I think that's more than just good. I think it's just stupendous.
And you're really one of our kids.
Right.
Yeah, I know.
And as far as you becoming a success, I had some doubts down through the years, but you've turned out great. The Lord's using you. That's good.
I think most people had doubts about me. Something must have hit me in the head in my 30s or something. It just woke me up. I don't know.
Well, I think you had more than one head injury.
Yeah. And it's neat to know that the Lord, no matter what we do, the Lord never gives up on us.
No. Well, and my goal now, it's like twofold. I want to honor Jesus to the point where I want to become like him on one end. On the other end, I want for him to be proud of me. And those two things in my life are really my goals. It's what I search for and lean toward and go after.
Well, I'm proud of you.
Well, is Diana proud of me?
Well, yes, of course. You've really grown a lot in the Lord, and I can really see how the Lord has, even though you'd get in trouble or you'd do something wrong, that the Lord would still use you in some way, and he's still continuing to use you.
Yeah. Well, I'm done getting in trouble.
Good.
The problem is when I got in trouble, it wasn't like, a real little thing.
Yeah. So does Susan verify that?
Probably, yes. She says I still act like I'm 16. And I find it really interesting when I go to Moldova. The last time we went there, I had 3 different churches ask me to speak to their teenagers. And I'm thinking, I'm in my 60s. Youth speakers are supposed to be in their 20s, but they're asking me. And one group I went to talk to, and they had about 25 or 30. They asked me to come back a second time. And now I'm going back to Moldova, and I'm also going to Slovenia for a week. And that group has asked me in one of their churches for me to speak to their teenagers. I'm like, what is this, going around Eastern Europe? I'm a teenage speaker?
But see, you can let them know your experiences and how the Lord had been with you through everything, and how if you depend on the Lord every day for what happens, I mean, they can see the change in you. And sometimes it's probably hard for them to believe if you tell a story that, oh yeah, he did that.
I know. But the very first, because when I became a Christian, I didn't have a Bible at all. And the first Bible I got was a Reach Out New Testament. And I believe you gave it to me, Lon.
Yeah, probably.
And you wrote in it, if you're faithful to God, he will bless you. And I have never in my life forgotten that. And I teach that today to many, many, many people.
And the thing is that when the Lord blesses you, there's times when he blesses you in a way that you hadn't even thought of.
Oh, I know. And too often people think blessings come monetarily, and I teach people, no, they don't. They come all different ways. They come in your family, come in your spouse, come in your children, come in your job, come whatever it is. But if you're faithful to him in all that you do, because people even come to me about their jobs in some secular world, and I say, well, if you're faithful to your job, you're being faithful to Jesus. If you're faithful to him in your job, in your career, he will bless you.
Yep.
And so
it's so simple.
Yep. And I found too that if you bless other people, then you yourself are being blessed.
Yes. Well, I think that's where joy comes from, blessing others, giving to others. And actually, Diana, in 1 John, and I learned this from Reuben Welch, and I teach this wholeheartedly, is that salvation comes from the community of believers. And in 1 John, he tells us that we need to lay down our lives for one another. He tells us that we need to love one another. And if we're not loving one another, then God is not even in us. And he further goes and says, if you hate one another, then you're deceiving yourselves and God is not in you. So it's interesting how you say that, because John teaches this really strong about how we need to give ourselves to one another.
God is all about relationships. The whole Bible is about relationships. Some good, some bad.
And I think that the Bible's there to teach us about how God is a person of relationship.
Yep.
And I found too that you can kind of feel when you're with people, you can kind of feel what their mood is. And I know sometimes Lon will come out with a joke just to break the mood and get it enlivened and get it going again. And sometimes it's no more than put your arm around somebody or just give them a positive comment of some kind. And it just seems to boost them up and to bless them. Yes.
So there's in one of the sermons you preached recently, you used Psalm 116.
Yeah.
Okay. And the scripture, and I want you to comment on this, because I want to know what you mean on this, or what the scripture means as well. It says in 116 verse 15, it says, precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints.
Right.
Expound on that.
Well, it's a simple verse that I've used in just about every funeral I've ever done. And to me, it's precious because of our relationship with Jesus. And when he calls us home and we experience that great reuniting with him, there's nothing more precious than that. So precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints, because he is calling them out of a world of hurt. He's calling them to their eternal reward and eternity in fellowship with him and the church. And so there's nothing better than that. You get to a place at my age when I actually know more friends that are on the other side than I know here. And so sometimes you feel like you can't wait to join them, because it's going to be a great reunion. Mm-hmm. And to me, that reunion, those relationships that God has built us for, we'll experience the total beauty of what God intended those relationships to be. And so it's a great thing for God and for the person who died. You can't believe it. People will say, especially some young person that just their life has been taken by cancer or car accident or whatever, and they'll say, why did God take them? And my question is always, why does God still leave me here? I mean, that's the ultimate goal, So I thought, once they're there, they never want to come back. So my mother, when my mother reached 95, she said she had lived so long, she was afraid that all of her friends on the other side would think she didn't make it.
Well, even the Apostle Paul said that for me to die is gain. And yet he goes on to say that, but he's supposed to be here for a little while longer for the people, for their sakes. An interesting verse in 2 Timothy verse 4, 7, and 8. And this is what our title of our program is: I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. And he goes on, I have kept the faith. Finally, there is laid up for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will give to me on that day, and not only me, but also to those who have loved his appearing.
Great verse.
It is a great verse. And I know that, sometimes when you get to be 90 or 80 or somewhere up there, you're like, okay, I'm ready to go. But Paul might have lived 8 more years after this.
Yep.
So, and I know I've told you
It's not on our time schedule.
I'm sorry?
It's not on our time schedule.
No, it's not.
It's
I
not
keep
good.
telling you, you can't go yet. I need you as my mentor still.
But it's not on your time schedule either. It's on God's time schedule.
Well, I know that in my life, I know I've disappointed you guys in my life. And for those things that really, I still feel regret in my life about that. But I also feel like in my life, looking at you, you are just an amazing two people that have loved the Lord. You've loved me, even when you want to tell me, go away, get lost, you know.
But all those things you're talking about, they've all been forgiven.
And because you have portrayed Jesus to me, it has helped me to really grasp a hold of what it means to be like Jesus.
Well,
and I
that's good.
I don't know of any higher compliment I could give to any person in the world than that.
Well, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
There's not anybody that I know who knows you who knows differently or believes differently. Everyone I know, they always, I'll visit people from years ago. Well, how's Lon doing? And then they'll comment how wonderful and so forth. In fact, Diana, I want to bring something up, and I want you to comment about this, because a lot of people wouldn't do some of the things that you've done. And what I mean by that is, so you were pastors in the Nazarene Church for most of your lives, and I know that Lon's parents were very sticklers about certain things, like jewelry, like skirts or dresses opposed to pants. But you honored them, even though you didn't feel the same way. Talk about that.
Well, for one thing, they were my elders, and you're always supposed to do what your elders asked. And even though I thought differently, I felt like I needed to honor them. Although I've probably, when we moved away and weren't around them all the time, I probably went back to whatever it was. I don't even remember now what it was that they were, wanted me to change. But it's something that was minor. It's like, wasn't it you in our first church that said I shouldn't be wearing an engagement ring?
It wasn't me. I think it was your dad or something. But I mean, Lon's dad.
No, it was somebody else. But anyway, I had this engagement ring, and it seemed like it bothered them. And so I took it off and put it away in my cedar chest. And it wasn't until years later that I realized I'm not around that person anymore, and I can put it back on, but it was something minor. I mean, some people probably wouldn't have wanted to take off their engagement ring, but my thing was, if it bothered them that much, then it wasn't worth me wearing right then. And
if I remember right, it was somebody from Lake Street. I'm almost positive it was Lake Street, because when you came to North Hills, I asked you about it. Why don't you wear your wedding ring, your diamond? And you said because it offended people.
Right.
Of course, I thought it was ridiculous. And then you would not wear pants around Lon's parents, because that was a big thing to them. And a lot of people today won't do that.
I won't wear pants to a church service, because I'm not dressing for other people to say, "Ooh, what a nice outfit." I'm dressing because I want to honor the Lord. And so I may be the only person at a church gathering, a church service, where I'm in a dress and not pants. But it took me, years before I even wore pants daily. Even though as a kid growing up, I would wear pants. But when I became a minister's wife, I felt differently that I needed to, I don't know, honor my position, honor the Lord by the way that I dressed. So I tried to make sure that I was dressed properly. And even today, I ask Lon, is this appropriate? Should I wear this or that? Because I want to honor the Lord, but I also want to be true to myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's so important for people to hear this, because a lot of people, they aren't focused on honoring the Lord.
Well, watch a sports game. The people that are up in the booth doing something, how are they dressed? Suit, tie, the whole thing for a football game or a baseball game. And then they come to church in what? Shorts, their work clothes. So who are they honoring more than the other?
Well, maybe they don't have a.
That's just my personal thing.
Maybe they need a booth in church.
I don't know, but it's a personal thing. And so I just feel that I'm glad that person's in church, and what they wear it doesn't bother me anymore, because I'm just so glad that they're in church.
Now, Lon, you've played a lot of roles in the church. I've seen you've been a pastor, and at the same time you were a youth pastor. How do you do both of those and manage your family and everything else?
Well, if there's nobody to do it, you just fit it in. You don't want to play favorites with your congregation, so the youth need you as much as the elderly do, and so you just fit it in. But it's not. The Lord did give me a deep love for people, so I really enjoy people, and that's why I enjoy pastoring so much, because you're helping people.
Yeah. Well, I think, and I've said this before, I think you are an amazing teacher, pastor, and I really enjoy when there's sermons go up on the internet. I do watch them, and I really hope you continue to teach off and on. I know that it's hard to do weekly or daily, but you are an amazing person when it comes to teaching the word. And
well, I enjoy it.
Yeah, I do too. It's something I believe that when God's giving you the gift to do something, he puts that something in your heart to where it's just part of you. It's what you yearn to do.
Yeah, that's true.
So tell us now, we have about 5 minutes to go. Tell us about your guys' relationship as the years have gone through, the changes, and then finally now here you are in your later years, and you don't have people. Well, I don't. Karen and Craig got there just recently, staying in your house all the time.
Well, they're part of our family.
Yes.
So, what was the question?
Give us a synopsis of your relationship, you and Diana, both of you two, together as you've gone through the years, and how it's maintained itself, how it's become successful, how you've grown closer and closer together.
Well, we do about everything together. We don't have those things where she takes her vacation and I take mine, or she goes somewhere. So unless it's a woman's thing or a men's thing, we probably go everywhere together. Mm-hmm. This week I took her to the doctor, and we have a lot more trips like that. And then usually if we go to the doctor, we go out for lunch. And so we do everything together. So when I leave in the car, I just expect her to be with me. So that's the way our relationship grows. And we're involved not only in the church, but the community here. It's a retirement community. So the people that live here, their next step is eternity. So we try to be a witness here. We have something every Thursday called Coffee Hour, where we meet and learn and greet people and get acquainted with new people and stuff like that. And I always try to let them know that I'm a pastor in case they need a pastor. And so anyway, and I've got a reputation for Coffee Hour for telling jokes and stuff and people like that. So so we just have a lot of fun with people and with what we do, and we enjoy life. And our sons keeps telling us that we ought to be ready to move into a care home, but we really love where we live because we love all our neighbors. And so it's just been good. When we retired here, I asked the Lord how he wanted to use me in retirement. And since then, I've pastored between pastors in 6 churches and taught Bible studies, spoke at Cowboy Church, which was in town, and done a bunch of things. And so I thought it's been amazing how God's opened the doors. So we just kind of step through them, do what he wants us to do.
Diana?
Oh, I just tag along with him after I retired from teaching. Just kind of relaxed a little bit. Right now I'm working on, well, for quite a while here, I've been working on our family history with both of us. And it's been great, going back and seeing all the relatives and reliving stories and finding out more about Lon's side of the family. And it's been great. I've really enjoyed it.
Well, you guys are an amazing couple. I'm so glad to hear that you still go out on dates.
Yep.
Even if the first part of the date is a doctor's office.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you've got 2 kids that are living nearby you, and then you have 2 in 2 other states, correct?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So, well, I'm so glad to talk to you. It's been a pleasure having you on our program. I love you guys. I really do.
Well, thank you for the time. It's been fun, and hopefully somebody gets something good out of this.
Yep. And good. It was good memories. Good memories.
Yes. Well, you guys take care. Love you.
Okay.
Don't get too lonely while your wife's gone.
Okay. Yes. We talk every day.
Oh, good.
Thank you for joining us, everybody. And you all have a wonderful day, a wonderful week, and aloha.
Aloha.